Okay. This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Paul.
Hello, everybody. I'm Paul. I'm an alcoholic. I'm always amazed how they give everybody a rousing applause when they get up to tell a story of devastation and despair, and it's quite the phenomena, I think. Anyway, so Richard, thank you, Richard. I don't know where I'm going tonight, but be amazed all of a sudden the time will be up. I know that's how it works. Welcome, people that are new, especially if you're here for the first time. Getting sober isn't easy, man. Isn't easy. And I remember telling that to my sponsor, and he says, well, you really only have to do it once. A lot of people do it more than once, but the way he said it, like, I just wanted to do it once. You know, I didn't want to have to do it again, you know. And there's nothing wrong with it. If you have to do it again, that's what you got to do, you know, because it's told to me a long time ago, it's alcoholism is progressive, it's incurable, and it is fatal if you don't arrest it. So I think the title of my story should be Mr. McNasty and the Kid. As Mr. McNasty was the nickname of my sponsor, the guy who found me in a 12-step house in San Pedro a long time ago. I had already had a sponsor because I came out of a hospital program, and I needed that. I needed to be taken out of my environment and secluded for a good 35 days where I couldn't be around anybody I did know. And because it's the most baffling thing about alcoholism for me is that no matter how bad it was, I kept doing it. It doesn't make any sense. You know, I was going to a neurologist because the left side of my body would go numb constantly every time I decided it was a good idea to tie one on. And so something was definitely wrong physically with me, and that scared me because I was just the kind of guy who, hey, let's party, let's have a good time. I was not one of those guys that just, you know, wanted to end it all. I wanted to get as much out of life as I could, man. I want the biggest kick I could find. I want the most fun. I want to have the best time. That was my thing, you know. And in fact, growing up, you know, the group I ran around with, our whole thing was, you know how you don't get busted? You destroy the evidence, right? So, you know what? If the bag's gone, you won't get busted. You might be high, but, you know, they get you on that, who cares? But that was the philosophy where I grew up, when the kind of guys I ran around with. And so, for me, once I got to the point where, I don't want to say I wanted help, but I know I needed it. You know, I needed something, because to continue on was just, you know, as plain as I could see that it wasn't going to last much longer. And like I said, I was in this hospital for 5 weeks, you know, and oh, it was great, man. You ordered your food ahead of time. They wheeled it down in a stainless steel, you know, trays. You come in there, you order anything you wanted, and you know, you had these sessions where you sat around and talked about your feelings, and you know, they took you out on walks, and they took you to meetings. They introduced me to Alcoholics Anonymous, and you know, I guess that was all good and great, but for some reason, you know, when my time was up, they told me that I wasn't going to be successful staying sober. And that really hurt my feelings, because I was doing everything they said in there. I said, what do you mean I'm not going to stay sober? And they said, well, you got what we call denial through compliance. I go, what the hell does that mean, you know? And I was doing everything they told me to do, but I was just complying with what they said. I didn't know what surrender meant. I didn't know what it meant to, you know, completely give yourself to this simple program. I had no clue what that meant. I didn't know that's the requirement, you know, to be successful. You know, to be a successful, sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, you got to give a lot up, everything. you know. So I'm in this 12-step house, the Beacon House on San Pedro, and it's not as nice as it is now. I heard it's real nice, but when I was there, it was a rat trap. When I walked in there, and it was quite a culture shock, because I walked in there and it was like you could see where the trail from the door to the stairs, you know, the carpet was all worn out, and the guys handed me a one set of sheets with cigarette holes in them, and they said, if you want to wash them, the washing machine's down the hallway in the back. And I come out of this fancy hospital, Century City Hospital, and I thought, wow, you know. And the first night there, and I was scared as could be, man. I know it today. I wouldn't have told you that then, but I was scared as could be. And to go there wasn't as scary as going back to that room that I had where the windows were taped, and my insanity got as bad as I ever wanted it to be, you know, as far as hearing things and thinking things and seeing things that weren't there, and that kind of behavior. And so I chose this 12-step house instead of that room, you know. And that night they had an in-house meeting, and I remember sitting on the couch. And it's not a very big room, and it was crowded, full of people, you know. And in walks this guy with a funny-looking coat that almost went down below his knees, and he had a sailor watch cap on, you know. And he came and he sat down and right across from me, you know. And I remember I did what I learned. One of the few things I learned in the hospital said, if you want to get sober, you have to take risks. You have to take a risk. And so I put my hand up and I shared something that, you know, at the time I thought was very important, but probably meant little or nothing. You know, but to me it was something that was profound, right? And after I was done, this guy shared right after me, and I guess I was able to catch it because it was right there. And he went on to share that when he got here, he had what he called the first 5 years was white knuckle sobriety, and just the way he described it, you know, I didn't want a minute of it, you know. And then he went on to say, which I found to be true for me. He said, "The price of freedom is constant vigilance." And as Bob was referring, that, you know, this is a malady, whatever you want to call it, an illness, you know, that if you don't watch it, you know, it could grab you back in a minute. I've seen people did a lot more than I've done, and been more in service and more committed to this program that weren't successful, and end up, usually it's, you know, for me, I've never seen an active alcoholic have a pretty death. I haven't seen any of them. You know, it's pretty horrific, and I don't want that. That's not my way. Not that I have much say in it, but that's not what I want. You know, and this guy Ricky, he was perfect for me. You know, I didn't know he was ornery and cantankerous, and he had a reputation down there that most people didn't like him. Like, we'd go to meetings, they'd say, "Hi, Paul, did you have to bring Ricky?" You know, that was the guy that was sponsoring me, and he was a character, man. And you know, in the beginning, it might have looked really nice. Here's a young guy taking this old guy around, crippled old guy around to meetings, and we're going out to have, you know, breakfast or lunch after the meeting. They thought, oh, what a nice guy taking his grandson out to breakfast, you know. And the truth was, he might have held onto my arm for balance, but I'm hanging on to him for my life, because for me to get high again, you know, I'm lucky. I'm lucky in the sense that when I got here, I wasn't on the fence. It wasn't maybe I'm not, you know. And, you know, I'm very fortunate and I think this is true, at least from my view, that an alcoholic, if you haven't had enough, you're going to have some more. You know, I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's been my experience. And when I got here, I had enough. I didn't know alcoholism was the problem, because the funny thing about me is I stopped drinking 2 years before I sobered up. You know, and when I got here, I didn't think I was alcoholic. I thought it was something else. I thought there was a difference. A lot of people think there's a difference. I personally don't. You know, what I've come to understand for me, that alcoholism isn't a substance. It's a condition, a hopeless state of mind and body. And that's my definition of what alcoholism is. And I had that when I got here, hopeless state of mind and body. You know, and I'm not a great wonder. I don't have a golden Cadillac story. You know, and if I were to die of a drug addiction or something tonight, I wouldn't make the paper. You know, but to tell you the truth, I found a way out. I found a way out of a living hell. That was my addiction, my alcoholism. And for that, man, I will be forever grateful. And I owe it to this guy. He's been dead 15 years, and I'd love the chance to talk about him because this is an opportunity for me to bring him back to life. And I never knew what it was like to have a person that you really loved. You know, I didn't know what love was when I got here. No idea. All I knew about was passion, my own, of course. You know, and if you were involved in it, lucky for you. You know, and this guy, in a way that I can't even describe to you, helped me rebuild my life. The last 10 years of his life, he helped me rebuild mine. And everything that has occurred in my life is a direct result of my benefit of the association I had with him. You know, sponsorship, if you find the right guy, you got a good ticket. You know, and I, like I said, I didn't pick him. He picked me. A lot of reasons, you know. And we did all kinds of crazy things together, man. We went to all kinds of conventions. We did, it turned to be, you know, you think coming here is going to be the end of the road, and you stay sober, man. This is the beginning of the broad highway, man. This is not a narrow road. This is not, we're not a glum lot. This is a place where your dreams will come true if you can stay sober, you know. And the best thing about Ricky for me was that his thing was, you know, and not to knock the fellowship. The fellowship is necessary. We need it. We need to get together. We need to see each other. It feels good to see people you haven't seen in a long time. But for me, it's the content of the literature and developing an understanding for myself about the principles of the program. You know, it's a spiritual answer and a program of action. Now, if you're anything like me, when I first got here, the whole idea of spiritual was enough to drive me back to my youth as I was growing up in a religious home, parochial school system, confirmed in my parents' faith, you know, singing in a choir, all that kind of stuff I would never admit to, you know, and I rebelled against. And I loved when I read Dr. Bob's story where he talked about that his shadow wouldn't darken the door of a church. And I said, man, I like this guy already, man, because that was me. That was me, you know. And Ricky was a scholar as far as the information. He wasn't very good at applying it for himself, but he had the information. And his fate would have it, you know, as he was helping me, things happened in his life that drew us closer together. I started listening to this guy doing what someone else told me to do for the first time in my life, you know. And I'm in this halfway house, and he told me, I want you to go back to work. I said, man, I don't want to go back to work. I like going to them Alano clubs and shooting pool, smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee. GR check sounds pretty good to me, you know. He said, no. He said, if you want to recover, the best thing you do is get back into the mainstream of life. And I said, yeah, but that was a place that I got loaded with those guys. I can't go back there. Oh yeah, that's where you're going. You're going. So I went back to work on his direction, right? Then he told me to move back into the house where I was living in the back of my folks' house. And I said, man, I don't want to live there. That's where the windows were taped. That's where everything was crazy. No, it's no sense in you driving all the way down here and working in West Hollywood. You know, so I moved back in there. And I was about 6 months sober, and it was like Easter week, because I remember he was down at the house and going to have Easter dinner with my family, you know, and which is kind of funny because he was such a character that my mom and dad said, who the hell is this guy and what is AA, you know? And you'd have to know my mom to understand it, because she just thought her prayers in Jesus was going to get me better, you know, and and not to knock Jesus, but you know, it wasn't working for me, you know, and and so this guy kind of baffled them, you know, and anyways, he goes into convulsions on a night, I forget, it was Easter night or the day before or something, and ended up going to St. John's Hospital, almost dies with a blood clot in his leg, and you know, and just before that, his house he was living in burned down. He had nowhere to go, you know, and no place to live, you know, on general relief, and he had hardly any income at all, and And I remember he's in the hospital. I remember sitting at home by myself and thinking about, I'd been to a few meetings. I heard what goes on in here. I'm a sharp guy. I pick stuff up real quick, And they say, don't leave before the miracle happens. I go, that's a bunch of, I go, he'd been sober. At that time, he was sober over 17 years. I go, where the hell's his miracle? And his life's in the toilet. He ain't got nothing, And so then I decided, you know what? I'm going to see if, have him move in and live in the back room. If the room was big enough, he could live in the back with me, And I asked my folks, and they let him move in, And thank goodness for that, because he lived there for 19 months. My first 19 months of sobriety, I had the sponsor living right in the bed next to me, And my good fortune, I'll tell you that. And we went everywhere together. There's a lady who's long passed, Bertha Ring was her name, down in the Long Beach area, and she used to look at us and call us the odd couple, because he was 68 and I was 28. But anybody been around a long time, you didn't see me without Ricky. Never, everywhere we went, and he was a source of information. I remember one time reading the big book, which didn't make any sense to me, but it put me to sleep. So, you know what? It was the perfect answer at the beginning, man. I'll read that thing. I'm right fast asleep, man. I couldn't tell you what I read. I'd turn the page and I'd read it again. I wouldn't know what I was reading, but it didn't matter. I was doing it. In the action is how we get better. That's what I found out. And I remember reading a story about the guy who went to Carl Jung, and I guess he was one of the high rollers at the time, and he had all kinds of money, and he went to the smartest guy in the whole world. How can I stay sober? And he said, I give it up. You're not gonna. You're hopeless. You ain't got a chance. I said, the best thing you could do is hire a bodyguard or lock yourself up if you think you're gonna get sober. And I thought, well, that's pretty good. Hope he got his money back. That's what I was thinking, man. But then it goes on to say, but this guy somehow got sober, and he was a free man, and he could do anything as long as he maintained a certain simple attitude. And that got my attention. I go, oh, wow, great, that's all I need. But then I read it over and I read over it. But it doesn't tell you in the book, what is this certain simple attitude I have to have for me to be successful? And I'm like, what the hell, What kind of book is this? They tell me it's what I need, but they don't tell me what it is that I need, And so what I remember, I said, hey, Ricky, what are they talking about? What is this certain simple attitude that I could have that'll make this successful? And he told me, he said, it's humility. And so and I'm the kind of guy, you give me something and I'll get every book in the world to, figure it out, And he saw me going crazy trying to figure out what humility was, right? And he stopped me right away and he said, you know what? I said, wait. I said, this is all you need to know, is when an alcoholic can become teachable, that's about as humble as he'll ever get. And I understood you couldn't tell me nothing growing up. You couldn't tell me nothing. I already knew it. I didn't know nothing, but I didn't want you to know that. You told me, oh, yeah, I know. You get that all the time around here. Yeah, buts. You get that all the time around here. Yeah, but. You tell the new guys something, yeah, but. Okay. And so what I had to learn to be was become teachable. And what was going to be where my teachings going to come from? My daily life. And I remember going back to work, and I'm trying to figure out, what is this thing, humility, And funny thing about humility, the minute you start talking about it, you just lost it, And so that's about as much as I got tonight for you guys, But, the best thing for me that I was able to do is that it went full circle. In the beginning, he was helping me. In the end, I got a chance to help him. Told you a little bit, he was a crippled guy, right? And I knew him, I say 10 years, right? He broke his hip 3 times in the time I knew him, because he'd fall and he'd break a hip. And the third time he couldn't get up and walk anymore, and so he didn't want to sit in a wheelchair, and that ended up being the end of him, But on the process to being the end, there's a lot goes on in someone's life, and I was there. About 100%. Changing diapers, bathing, the whole deal, And I remember there's a girl who's still sober that my wife and I were helping, and she tells me, she says, you got to be careful. That's going to take a lot out of you, And I just looked at her and I didn't tell her, but I thought, I felt sad because she didn't get it. Unconditional love should not drain you. It should fill you up. And so if you're doing something and it's too much for you, or, oh, this is taking too, you ain't doing it right. It's not unconditional, and what I found out for me is that, this guy's example, the way he lived his life, constant pain from beginning to end, and even after he died, I couldn't get his remains from the county because there's a whole bunch of legal things, if you're not related to somebody, and took a while to even get that accomplished. And but it was funny, I had to buy the remains from the county for $515, right? They wouldn't let me cremate him, but they would do it after a month's time. That's weird. But the thing about it, in his bank account, he had $530 in his bank account. So I thought that was odd. But and a lot of things have happened. And one of the funnier things, I read every spiritual book I could find. I didn't care what it was. Because, see, for me, like I told you, I was brought up in this religious home, and the idea of a spiritual life was, I had prejudices, spiritual prejudices. I had to get rid of them. It isn't what I thought it was when I first came here. And so I would try everything. I don't care if it's Native American, shamanism. My next door neighbor is Muslim. They gave me a Quran. My wife's Buddhist. I've been to talk to monks about meditation, all that stuff. I don't care what it was, because it talks about it in the book, and it's in italics, which means it's important, right? And it says the main thing is to believe in a power greater than yourself and live by spiritual principles. Now I could do that. That's something I could swallow, and so I began to try to figure out what spiritual principles to live by, and the power greater than myself, that's a given. How can you not figure that one out? You might not like him, you might not want to do it at once, but he's out there, it's out there, whatever you want to call it. And so that was the easy part. And I read this one book, and it was about, I think it was Japanese. But they believe that the spirit enters the body at the 5 months pregnancy of a woman. That's when the spirit enters the body, when the child starts moving or kicking, right? And he died when my wife was 5 months pregnant, right? So I read this, and I'm thinking, oh, that's kind of weird. And I file it away in the back of my head, and she has the baby. And I remember being in St. John's Hospital, and she's wiped out after having, given birth. And I'm just me and this a little girl that's, and I look at it, and she's looking at me right in the eyes. And I'm looking at her, and I said, Ricky, is that you? and I don't know. she's pretty possessive of me, so it could be, man. Who knows? Who knows? And I like to think it is. She don't like it. She don't like to think that, but and a quick thing, because time is just going like crazy, like always. And, I didn't know a thing about love, like I said earlier, and my problem, and a lot of our problems is that our relationships, we have a hard time, and I'm no different, and Ricky was perfect help for that, and I didn't even know he was helping me. We'd go to meetings all the time, and you can't help but, wow, there's a lot of attraction everywhere, every place I've been, like, oh, yeah, wow, every meeting I had a new attraction, and coming attractions, I don't know. But anyway, so, he didn't deter any of that, but, we'd get together, and, he didn't care, whatever, but there'd come a time, and unbeknownst to me, she'd come up to me and say, I really like you, Paul, but if Ricky's part of the deal, I'm out of here, and I said, I'm sorry, but he's the deal, because I was so close with my sponsor, and this went on more than once, and somewhere I was about over 5 years sober, and I introduced him to this girl, and we hung out, and it's been 20-something years later, and we're still together, and I know it's a result of Ricky making it happen. Because, see, my thing is, I don't know how to really look correctly at anything, I'm looking for the wrong reason, It's either a physical attraction or it's a financial attraction, but it's not a spiritual attraction. It's not a good combination, you know. And he was able to see that, and I feel in the woman I'm with now, and lucky for me, you know. And the weirdest thing about it, it's nothing I wanted or thought about when I first got here. For me to be tied down to something or someone was, oh my goodness, forget it. That's the end of the world. That's the kind of guy I was, you know. Not to say that's good or bad, but that's just the kind of person I was. And so it's kind of funny to me. You know, it's like you don't really get what you want around here, but you get what you need. And a lot of things have happened in my sobriety that I hope to God they don't happen again, but I know that they were necessary for my development. And I can look back and say, man, I'm glad that happened. Now I know why, you know. And her being with me helped because, I mean, if I was with you and you would, you know, and I think most women are like this. I could be wrong, so please don't let me know afterwards, all right? But a girl would always like to hear someone say, "I love you," and those were 3 words I could not say. You know, I lived with this one girl for a long time, and she'd always say, "I love you," and I go, "Oh, that's nice." That would be my answer. That's nice. I could not say it. I'm sorry, I couldn't. And I think my wife did this to me one time. When you have a little child, and I don't know, I have girls, so I don't know, maybe it's the same with boys, I don't know. But I have a little girl, and she'll come up to you and say, "I love you." You cannot help but to say, "I love you" back. And as a result of that, I started to melt that cold ice of a heart I had. And I've learned how to accept the love because, you know, I grew up in a big family with a lot of brothers and sisters and loving parents. I never seen my dad drunk. They didn't smoke or carry on. They stayed married till the day they died. And you would think I would know how to accept love, but I couldn't. I couldn't. To the small child, who I guess through the mother's prompting, unbeknownst to me, helped to develop that within me. Then now I can do it. And see, my problem, and I don't know, it might be yours too, it's a good chance if we're in this room together, but is that I was afraid of my feelings. I'm not afraid of my feelings anymore. Every one of them is necessary. Even sadness has a benefit. When my sponsor died, that was sad. When my father died, that was sad. But as a result of that sadness, my heart got bigger, and I'm a better human being as a result of that. So to me, it's necessary, you know. And I've learned that this development of the person I am is a result of everything that I've chosen to do. And where I'm at today is a result of my own ideas. So I don't complain about nothing. You know, if it's something I don't like, I work to try to change it, but I have to admit to the fact that I am right where I'm at as a result of my own decisions. You know, no one did nothing to me. You know, and so what I have to do is decide where and how I want to go and what direction. You know, and I'm just a lucky guy. You know, I got a wife that loves me more than I can stand. I got 2 kids. I got 2 kids that adore me. You know, where you walk in the house and they don't even let you take your work clothes off before you give me a break. You know, they're hugging you and that. And I have a job that I'm respected on. I got people who depend on me for their livelihood. You know, it's just like, wow, who would have thought that was possible from a guy who first walked in here and I couldn't get out of my chair to get a cup of coffee during the break because I was too full of fear and self-centeredness and anxiety, you know, and that was the worst part of the meeting for me is when I like this meeting, there's no break, man. I would have come back to this one when I was new, but man, it used to kill me because I saw people getting up and talking to each other, and how the hell do you do that if you're not out of your head loaded on something? You know, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it, and it took me a long time. And if anybody has that problem, I know the perfect solution. You take a commitment, something like coffee cleanup. Because when the meeting's over, that's the worst time because people are doing things, right? And then if you're back there cleaning the coffee pot, by the time you're done, they're all gone, right? So you don't have to talk to hardly anybody. You're busy, you know, and that was my help. And there's so much that Alcoholics Anonymous can do for anybody who applies themselves here. You know, I've heard so many stories of people who have done wonderful, wonderful things, you know, and I don't know how to transmit to the person who's new and thinks this is a bunch of hooey and they just look on the surface, because it's so much more than that. You know, it's so much more than that. And you know, Richard, thank you again for letting me share, because a guy told me a long time ago that nothing is of any value unless it's shared. Now, if you got a joke ain't no good unless you share it with somebody, right? The sex ain't really that good unless you share it with somebody. I'm sorry, man. You know, and just anything, it's of no value unless it's shared. So for me, being here and you guys listening to what I have to say increases the value for me. And there's nothing more valuable to me than my own sobriety. It's a precious gift that I was given, and I know what I have to do to keep it. You know, I'm not going to be one of those people that think, oh, I've done enough. You know, I've seen too many people. You know, you can't go to too many meetings, but you sure can go to not enough. You know, I've seen people that came up one short, you know, and probably wish they went to one more, you know. You know, and because I used to go to them all the time, 2-3 times a day, and take commitments in a bunch of them, and people say, oh, you're kind of upset. And I'd read the book all the time, and they thought I was a nut. Well, you're right, because the truth is the sick ones stay. You know, so if you're sick enough, you just might stay. You know, I'm just really thankful that I'm here, you know, and it's another holiday season that we get to do what we'd like to do instead of what we have to do. Because for me, in the end, it wasn't about wanting to get high, as I had to get high. You know, that's why I'm a little confused when I hear a guy get up and say, oh, I want to get high. I go, you poor guy, you're going to get high. Because, you know, I got to the point where I had to and I didn't want to. And Alcoholics Anonymous has shown me a way that I don't have to anymore. You know, I don't have to anymore. And, you know, it's possible for anybody. Thank you.